All right, so I did a couple of things. One is I went and got a fresh bucket of water. You guys will each have your own water at your own station. Take care of your own water, and because I'm going to be sponging on my pot, I don't want it to be dirty water full of a bunch of like glaze goo, so clean water. Then I went and I got the oxide that I chose, which is yellow ochre. There's a number of different oxides. I'll show you where to find those. I'll show you, the different looks of the different oxides. But basically an oxide is it's a earth oxide. It is something that comes from nature. This is a derivative of iron, but they do beautiful things. And they also are wonderful for picking up texture. So, oh shoot, I shut off the wax. I should have left it on because I'm gonna, anyway. Okay, so here's what I'm doing, right? I'm going to try to get this oxide to seep into the low spots, right? Like I talked about on that other textured piece that I'm gonna sponge off the glaze. This is similar. I'm gonna sponge off the oxide, but it's just a wash, so I can brush it on, which gives me a little bit more control, which I like. Okay. It's a really popular thing to do with texture. And you know what? I'm getting some of it on the smooth. I'm not too worried about that because that's going to be covered in glaze, and a lot of the glazes make some interesting changes with an oxide. So brush it on there. Now, I don't really need to stress about getting a little bit of oxide on the foot, but we did have an interesting accidental finding. A student from a few semesters back was using a lot of oxides and really liked what iron oxide did to the feet of his pots. So he coated them in red iron. They looked beautiful, almost like metal, almost like iron. But one of his pieces in the kiln, well, and you guys don't know that much about kiln shelves. Anyway, it touched the actual kiln shelf, not the kiln wash on the kiln shelf. It touched the actual kiln shelf. The actual kiln shelf is made of silicon carbide, which is reactant. And so the metal in the oxide, along with the silicon carbide, created a huge like eutectic reaction, and the whole pot melted. Like it melted from the conductivity of the kiln shelf. The corner of the kiln shelf
so
also
crazy.
melted. There was this strange black puddle where his pot had been, and you know, about this much of the pot, you know, so like if this was my pot, like about this much of the pot, of the top of the pot was down at the bottom, stuck to that whole molten thing. It was the strangest thing. But then we did some research and found out what happened. So you have to make sure that if you have an iron-based oxide or a metal-based oxide on your foot, that does not touch the kiln shelf at all. I'm loading the kiln. I'll make sure. Okay, so now I've got my nice clean sponge. I've got my nice clean water, and the rim dried first, so I'm going to start at the rim. But I am going to just sponge over the top. And you can see how, like just already in one swipe, right? It's much deeper in the oxide sticks nicely into the low parts, but kind of the effect is minimized on the high parts. And I think it's really just a lovely way to enhance that texture in a good way. Yeah, that looks good. All right, going down here. Also dry. Oh, that looks good. Yeah, liking that. Okay. And there we go. Oh, that took away maybe more than I wanted. All right, well, for the sake of the video, I'm just going to go ahead. Go forward, move ahead. Okay. Now, I am going to wax over the oxide, right, so that will stay nice and clean. That will not be covered up by the layer of glaze that I put on. And it makes for a really nice contrast, kind of dry surface, kind of a dry surface, shiny surface, dry surface. So it'll dry surface, shiny surface, dry surface. So it'll have a nice kind of rhythm to it, and then it will be shiny on the inside as well. So I'm gonna go wax. You probably don't need to watch that.